So back in 2020, I picked up Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Body, and discovered a concept that's been floating around inside my head ever since, the minimum effective dose. Ferriss used boiling water as an example, 100 Celsius at standard air pressure. Higher temperatures won't make our water more boiled, they just waste resources. This fascinated me, both for the application in the book, which was about lifting and nutrition, and also because I started thinking about how it mapped onto practicing and playing guitar and ukulele, and especially jujitsu. I think this hooked me because until I considered the minimum, I'd always been figuring out how to optimize for the maximum. Attend as many classes as possible. Go to all the open mats. I think we've all done our own version of this before. In 2013, I went for the maximum. 4 evening classes, 5 afternoon classes, an open mat, and also two judo classes midweek. I was expecting complete burnout or injury, but neither happened, and it was actually a lot of fun. Where things began to stretch thin was at the day job. I have a lot of flexibility in my work. It's both the nature of the job and my tenure and experience. I did not have a good boss at the time, amongst a list of other issues, just completely inattentive. After a few months of 11 classes a week, they called me into the office for a meeting to ask me what the hell was happening with my job performance. It wasn't working. Jiu-Jitsu was definitely working insofar that I was having fun, but my hobby was putting pressure on one of the most important parts of my life outside of it, my career. The customers were happy, but my production numbers showed a downturn that slowed but didn't level off. It was showing up in my paycheck, and even the most incompetent administrator I've ever worked for saw it. The customers were eventually going to see it. So I cut the afternoon classes, but was still trying to do the maximum, and the injuries started happening. Cauliflower ear, a dislocated pinky finger, a popping noise in my knee and my hip, a pectoral tear. The time off got longer with each injury, days, then a couple of weeks, then a month, then several months. And recovering from the pectoral tear overlapped with our annual trip to Seoul. I couldn't play jujitsu with my friends. Worse, I'd convinced a couple of my Canadian friends to make the trip with us, so I had to go to the gym and watch everyone else have fun. We were out drinking afterwards, and Gwanjang told me outright to quit judo. Not because it's intrinsically dangerous. The problem was me, he advised. I didn't have the battery for everything I was trying to do. And what was the point? I told myself I was doing more jujitsu because I loved it, but looking back, I think I was trying to shortcut skill acquisition through volume. More classes equal better, faster, right? And I think jujitsu became avoidance. The day job was stressful, the gym is fun. So I kept forcing it. But here's the thing, I was trying to skip the struggle. My version of this was volume. Volume felt like work. It felt like I was doing something, but I wasn't doing the hard part, the deliberate practice, the focus, the actual learning where I'd be uncomfortable and not knowing what I was doing yet. I wanted the expertise without earning it. Everyone saw me having a great time. My coaches saw me training hard. Jessica heard about all of the friends I was hanging out with. But my jujitsu wasn't actually improving proportional to the time invested. I was telling myself I was taking the hobby seriously, but there was no balance, no strategy, just volume. And volume in of itself doesn't work for hobbies or skill acquisition or or anything really. It's always the journey. Maximum volume was trying to skip that. When I stumbled onto the medium effective dose, it was the effective part that stuck a pin in my memory. I wondered what would happen if I started exploring the minimum. So a couple of weeks back, I came across that 4 hour body entry in my journal, and it went from floating around inside my head to suddenly feeling that creeping sense of motivation. So I started digging. It turns out I'd completely misunderstood what practice means. The training session isn't the dose is practice plus recovery. I didn't understand how it related to practice until I found research showing that skill acquisition happens in two phases. The first phase is fast learning. What happens in class when you drill something and it starts feeling less awkward by the end of the session. It's a temporary sensation. The thing we feel and think means we're getting better. The second phase is slow learning, the permanent hard wiring that happens hours after training, specifically 6 to 8 hours after. We don't just learn the overhead sweep from collar and sleeve in class. The process begins there, but the actual performance gains happen between training sessions, especially after sleep. This is why the maximum, and by that I mean volume, failed me. Here's the mechanism. Learning requires specific proteins to strengthen connections between neurons. Their supply is limited and typically depletes after 60 to 90 minutes of intense focus. The synapses themselves also become saturated, like a sponge that can't hold any more water. At that point, the brain stops encoding. Everything after is just junk volume. And there's a second problem. When I stacked judo on top of jiu-jitsu on top of open mats, I triggered what's called retrograde interference. The brain needs a buffer, roughly 4 to 6 hours, to stabilize the first skill before it can handle a second without overwriting the progress. I wasn't giving it that buffer. I was training, eating, training again. The intense focus of the fast phase sends the signal. But once the signal is sent, more reps while we're exhausted aren't strengthening it. They're just causing wear and tear. The 6 to 8 hours after class, that's where the difference gets made. When I'm supposed to be sleeping. But this opened another can of worms. I train in the morning nowadays, and I can't just go to sleep afterwards. But my jujitsu is improving. What's going on? It's the pauses. In every jujitsu class I've ever been to, we drill in pairs. 1 rep on each side, then we switch. Nobody drills for 20 minutes straight. We do a bunch of reps back and forth, then we sit around, maybe chat or watch other people. Then back to drilling. I always thought this was how jujitsu classes just worked, that it was just to keep people from getting bored. I've never asked where it came from. It turns out that this is compatible with learning. Research from 2021 found that the brain doesn't learn while we're moving. We learn when we stop, specifically during roughly 10-second pauses. And here's the part that stunned me. When we stop drilling for those 10 seconds, our brain replays the movement we just did at 20 times speed. In that 10-second break, our brain might replay that overhead sweep from collar and sleeve 200 times perfectly. Without that break, we lose those 200 reps. Even better, we learn 4 times faster standing still between reps than we do during the slow learning phase that happens when we sleep. Every gym I've ever trained at has been doing the minimum effective dose all along. We just didn't know why it worked. The minimum effective dose for the jiu-jitsu hobbyist isn't a specific number of classes per week. It's understanding that the dose includes the recovery. Show up to classes consistently. Take the breaks between your reps. Your brain is working at 20 times speed during those pauses. Sleep well, and if you train in the morning like I do, nap. I might be a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but I'm a red belt when it comes to napping. 11 minutes in the truck, seat back, timer set. I wake up alert. sometimes with time dilation, sometimes with dreams. Research shows even a short nap produces similar consolidation benefits to a full night's sleep for motor skills. We have to balance jujitsu with the rest of our lives. Work, sleep, relationships. The constraint forces the MED. And it turns out that's not a limitation. It's the actual mechanism of learning. So, your turn. This is all new to me. Throw me a bone. Who are the jujitsu nerds who came across this and have been working on it? Are there any scientists in this field who are also jujitsu players? I'd love to hear from you. What's your minimum effective dose looking like right now? If you're in Victoria, British Columbia, Lolakana Martial Arts has more than 20 classes a week for both adults and kids in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Nogi Jiu-Jitsu, and kickboxing. Free parking. We're Indigenous owned. Come check out our free unlimited trial week.